Fuck yes, welcome back to the Hype News Roast. With me as always, Jonathan Hartsey.
Welcome back, everybody.
Chewie Darcy.
Hi.
And Emily Blake.
Not gonna laugh this time.
I kind of forgot the words halfway through there. Could you tell? Did I make it through?
It's okay. I was like, don't laugh. Don't laugh. God damn it.
Apologies to the person listening to this for the first time.
Yeah, oof.
We're not going to tell you what our show is.
You got After the Hype in there, and then the rest of it kind of...
We talk about movies.
Yeah, we talk about movies.
And we have guests.
And we have guests.
We laugh. We have a good time.
Yeah, we do. Special guest today is Johnny Recher.
Oh, hi.
Johnny.
Is this where I, as the podcast guest, have to pretend I don't know we're recording and ask if we've already started recording?
Yeah, oh yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
yeah.
Then you can ask, can we swear on this?
Yeah.
And
then
yes, we can swear.
Fantastic.
Okay, so now that we got that out of the way.
Good.
Do you have anything you'd like to plug right out of the gate where people might know you from? You've worked on fucking everything under the sun.
Yeah. You would not have ever seen me. But
I live in your house.
yes, I am. Yeah,
Just off the periphery.
yeah, right outside of your
The
field of
perception
vision.
filter.
Let's
of your
see. Let's see things that are out right now. Well, we're all waiting for Unicorn Store to come out, the Brie Larson's first movie that hopefully someone will pick up. It was at Toronto and hasn't seen the light of day yet. Last big thing, I guess the Purge election year, which is just the first sign of the apocalypse, I think,
Oh my
historically
God.
now.
That's the next Purge is election year?
Oh, no, it was the one that's already out.
Oh, it's already. Oh,
Yeah,
that's how much attention I pay to the Purge movies.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah, there's another one in the pipeline, but yeah.
Of course.
Um,
and a TV show, isn't there?
It's called
yeah,
the
they're
Purge
working on
midterms.
they're working on a TV show as well.
TV. Oh, I can see a TV show being kind of cool.
Yeah. Whiskey
Yeah.
Tango Foxtrot is still free on like every single streaming platform,
Yeah.
Prime or whatever, and your mom will love it, and you might like it too. No, yeah, but
You AD'd all these things?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
fucking cool, dude.
I've had a real good run, and I'm currently just blurry-eyed off an overnight on a movie called Peppermint, starring Jennifer Garner, which they've been whispered about, but there hasn't been much about it. But fun little action movie.
But it is being made.
Yeah, it is being made. We are currently making it. So, you know.
I'm excited to hear Jennifer Garner going back to action.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah.
She was a great... Alias was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And she was good in Daredevil. I know the movie wasn't good, but she was good in it.
Yeah.
She's great.
She could have been a good Elektra if they'd given her good writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really phoned that shit in.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a Where Have You Been Doing? We're back. We've had a few weeks off here, so I'll allow two things if you have them, but you got to say them both quickly and not go too in-depth in them. I'm only going to do one, because that's all I really want to talk about. I saw The Greatest Showman, and it fucking sucked.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It didn't completely suck.
There was good dancing and singing, sure, but with the songs that they were dancing and singing to sucked, so, I didn't like it. There's one really good dance sequence between Hugh Jackman and, what the fuck was his name? Zac Efron, where they're like doing shots while singing, and like while one is drinking, the other one's singing, but they're singing like the same sentence, so they're just like trading off words, and that sequence was really cool.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And that's
It's
about
also
30
kind of
seconds of a
fun.
2-hour horrible movie. So
Apparently. Oh, go ahead.
When you're watching it, you're kind of be like, oh, Hugh Jackman's kind of trying to date rape him, but not for sex, but for money.
yeah,
Apparently,
yeah.
he also like kept an old black woman like as a slave and horribly mistreated and abused her to make her into a freak show person.
oh, he did tons of horrible things.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
none of
and-
that's in the
and
movie.
among
Bad
other,
things
yeah,
about
that
it.
were just completely left out of the movie and just sort of like la da da, it's fun because we're singing.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch the movie, you think that P.T. Barnum's just kind of an egotistical jerk.
And tortured 0 elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
But he gets redeemed in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, they all do.
Waiting
You
for
know.
the 100% elephant torture cut of
Yeah.
that movie. They're like, oh man, we shot so much elephant
It
torture.
exists. It exists. I
It's
know
out there.
it exists. I don't
it's
care
the
what.
3-hour version with a full hour of elephant torture.
Everyone in history who you ever thought was cool was actually a fucking asshole.
Most likely,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, I will say the other one that I saw that I really, really liked, and I just won't go into details on it because you should see it as fresh as you can, which was I, Tonya.
Oh, I loved I,
I
Tonya.
thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, I've done 2 movies with Margot, and I think she's an exceptional human being, and I am very excited for her to win every last thing.
I want her to win every last thing
Yeah.
for this movie. She was so good in it.
Yeah.
But that's it for me. I'll stop there.
All right, I decided in my time off to watch season 10 of Doctor Who.
Finally.
Yeah,
I mean, that took me a while to get around to it, too. Did you
took-
like it?
it was okay. I mean, it has this problem, and I hope they fix this with the new Doctor, where I predicted every episode and what kind of thing it was going to be. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the space episode where they can't get to the TARDIS because of this. There was a lot of that, and then at the end, when the
You're
master
saying
show.
that Moffat stopped caring.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Moffat really phoned this last
so
season.
much of this season is phoned in, and I found that Moffat's episodes were the least favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But the acting in them was still pretty good. I mean, Peter Capaldi is a good actor.
Yeah, he needed a different showrunner though.
He did, and I like Bill.
I like Bill too.
I like.
I really like Bill, but they gave her nothing.
They did, yeah.
It was like
She had a
halfway
great introduction, and then
great introduction. Then halfway through the season, they forgot she existed or cared that she existed, and then like her resolution, I was like, I felt like I saw this before, and then I realized it was kind of similar to the Clara.
It was exactly what
Yeah.
happened
Yeah.
with
Was,
Laura.
yeah.
I was like, I had this weird sense of deja vu, and I couldn't place it, and then I was like, oh wait, this was just the last season.
At the same time, because Moffat is incapable of letting someone stay dead, it's this like that he'll give you these supposedly gut-wrenching deaths, but none of them mean anything because you know the
Yeah.
person's going to be saved somehow without like 100% of the characters Moffat kills just find
even
a way
the
to
Pawns
survive.
Still had a happy ending. They
Yeah.
just went back in time.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was there's I liked I think in this season I liked a lot of the premises of the episodes.
Yeah.
The kind of thing like emoji robots that like force you to be
emoji
happy. I was
robots
like,
are
oh, that's a cool idea. And then the rest of the episode just kind of happens. And then there was one where it was like the Queen, God Save the Queen or something. They were like soldiers in space or something from Victorian
Oh
time.
yeah, that one took me about 2 settings to get through. I did not like that one at all.
It was a rough watch.
Yeah.
And I binged this all. So like I was just like at the end of every evening after like 3 or 4 episodes, I was like, oof, I made it. I made it this far. Let's see. There's a space episode probably due. Oh, yep. The next one. Okay.
Yep.
Although like Air as a capitalist entity, like that was cool. Like a lot of cool ideas, just everyone phoned it in.
I thought Capaldi and Bill still gave it their all.
Yeah.
And then actually when John Sim showed up, I thought he really chewed up the scenery in like a wonderful way. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, the stories
I'm-
just weren't quite.
I
there.
like
Very curious about how they're going to fix that because the master ain't fucking dead, y'all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's died how many times?
I know,
He'll be
but this time they made it a pretty hard situation to like logic their way out of. But they will.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
Wibbly wobbly.
and they don't have to even do it in the next season. They can wait for a while.
Yeah, I'd like
'Cause,
that. I wish they would. Maybe now that we've got a new showrunner and a new doctor, we could also get some new villains and some new, like, just something new. So it's not
New
just-
pacing.
Yeah.
I would appreciate new
Endless
pacing.
Cybermen.
Yeah.
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 I like the
Doesn't-
Cybermen,
and
but
the
I liked it,
Daleks,
but-
it doesn't always
yeah.
have to be
It-
Daleks.
It interrupted the premise of like this ship that had 2 different times, like that had like a weird time travel thing. I like that idea of the ship. I just didn't care about the Cybermen part of it. I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, 10 seconds here is like 10 years back there. You could play that with some great tragedy. Oh, Cybermen, okay.
It's also people are just constantly inventing Cybermen. Everywhere you go across the entire fucking everywhere.
That's our
someone
logical
just
conclusion.
magically invents the exact same thing someone else invents. It's
By the
just-
way, I have an idea for an upgraded human.
is it Cybermen?
It's called a digital man.
We should keep moving though. Chewie, do you have one?
Well, I saw the same things as you did.
Did you?
Greatest Showman and I, Tonya. I, Tonya was better than Greatest Showman, but I still think Greatest
Oh,
Showman. Just suspend your disbelief at Greatest Showman and enjoy all the really cool costumes and good dancing, because to me that was the best part of the movie. Other than that, we also saw Jumanji,
We did.
which was actually a delight. Having
So much better than I thought it would be.
Jack Black stole that show. Like, all the actors had pretty dang good chemistry, actually. And The Rock's is always delightful, but Jack Black just stole it. Him pretending to be a 15-year-old girl stuck in his body was amazing. I love the part when she asked the guys, "You have to show me how to pee." I'm like, that was the greatest sequence.
Don't ruin the lines from it
I
because
won't.
it's so good.
It's so funny. And then I also rewatched The Day After Tomorrow, because apparently the entire East Coast and Midwest is in a deep freeze.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, well, I can't, experience that with you, but I can watch this movie. And I still love my super sappy, melodramatic disaster movies. Roland Emmerich.
but
don't
not
quit.
Battleship. Okay, that's fine.
Because that's not a natural disaster movie. That is just...
I think that movie was a natural disaster.
I like my giant wave hitting New York, electrical storms, all that crap, and how we are all
Immortal
gonna die.
wolves.
Immortal wolves. And then I wanted to watch Geostorm again afterwards, but you can only buy it, you can't rent it.
I'm surprised you didn't just buy it.
I figured you'd be mad at me.
I would have.
Geostorm was fun if no one went to see it.
There's a reason.
It was so bad, but amazing. And that was me.
Emily, what about you?
I got a good thing and a disappointing thing. I'll start disappointing. I watched 3 Billboards. God, I love Martin McDonagh. We all know, I mean, if you've been listening, you know how much I love In Bruges, and I really like 7 Psychopaths, and I love 6 Shooter, and all, like, everything's ever done, but 3 Billboards was fucking disappointing. It didn't have a satisfactory conclusion. The racist piece of shit cop just suddenly decides because he was set, oh, God, I'm spoiling things. But like it had characters just suddenly going, oh, I guess I'm not a bad person now. It just sort of stopped. It didn't. They also really don't know how to market Martin McDonagh. That movie's not funny at all, like
No, it's
at
not.
Fucking all. But they made it look like a quirky comedy, and it just sort of. I think he stepped out of his wheelhouse a little bit, and it didn't work. I just was very. There were some good moments to it, but.
I can't wait to actually talk about that one because that ended my top 10 of the year. So I'm
Really?
really interested to talk to you about that
that's
one.
weird because like
I did not like 7 Psychopaths at all, and you liked it, and then
Yeah.
we flipped on this one.
Interesting. Okay, but the good thing is I've been listening. I just finished yesterday listening to Trevor Noah read his book, Born a Crime, which I highly recommend the audiobook because Trevor reads it and he also does accents. And I think whenever he does the accents of all the different communities in South Africa, it's sexy as fuck. So, he does tell funny stories. There was one story about pooping that I fucking was driving. I was driving over here to see the rats, and I could not stop fucking laughing. But most of the book is actually largely about privilege because Trevor Noah is unique in that he's kind of a one of a kind in South Africa in that black people and white people were not allowed to have sex. It was illegal. That's why it's called Born a Crime. His mother intentionally chose to have a baby with a white man, which does not fucking exist in South Africa under apartheid. So he sometimes in certain communities he blended with the white kids, in certain communities he blended with the black kids, in certain communities he didn't really belong anywhere, and in other communities he blended with colored kids, which is what they call people who are descended from the whites who came to South Africa way back when and mixed with the black people who were there. But they mostly stay with each other. Everyone in South Africa at the time was just like in their own group, and he blended between all the groups depending on where he was. And he talks about like what it's like to be a black kid in one scenario, a white kid in another scenario, and he really talks about privilege because he talks about like how sometimes it being the color he is worked in his favor, sometimes it very much didn't. And he also talks about abuse because his mom, by the way, his mom is a goddamn goddess. Just hearing him talk about, she is a badass. Like, you give her a rule and she will be like, fuck you, I'm going to break it and get away with it. But even she ended up the victim of domestic abuse. And he talks about the system failing her and all this. It was just a really amazing book to talk about social issues and things we take for granted. One quick anecdote that was my favorite was his great grandma, he does something very bad. He's a very mischievous kid, and he gets in trouble with all his cousins, his black cousins, and the grandma, who is black, whoops them all. She can't whoop Trevor. She tries and she stops and she refuses to whoop him. And his mom gets home and she's sitting on the bed crying and she's like, I don't know how to beat a white child. And I'm like, oh, that's so, that's kind of fucked up. The reason she doesn't know how to be a white child isn't about societal restrictions. It's because when you beat a white child, you can see their skin turn colors. And it freaked her the fuck out. Because black kids, you can't see the bruises the way you can on white kids. And I was like, that's something that's like, that never occurred to me.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Like little things that you just sort of never think about, but he's been exposed to so many different cultures that you get a glimpse of all of it. It's a really, really cool book. Highly recommend it.
That actually really upsets me.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay when you can't see the damage?
Yeah. It's so weird. I was like, oh my God, what an unusual thing to, like, none of us ever think about that.
Oh, it's a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, I know. But it was just like, holy shit. Blew my mind. Like, oh my God.
Johnny, and last but not least.
Oh, sure. I had a couple. Not sure kind of how the table would split. I'll go with an album.
Okay.
Things that still exist in some form. There's a wonderful Canadian psychobilly band called the Creepshow. Female lead singer. I've been a fan of theirs forever. They just put out their 4th album called Death at My Door, which has some fantastic songs on them. One's called Another Way Out, which is essentially if you love like the chord progression from Creep, and but always wanted that as a female-led psychobilly song about dealing with suicidal thoughts. Like
that is
that's
what I've
the
always
song
wanted.
for you. But yeah,
I'm down.
really love it. And it's another, they've gone through a couple lead singers, but just a strong showing for the music dorks out there. And the other one I'll toss out there, which I think might be a good segue, as I just did my annual Netflix binge of the second season of The Magicians, which I am a fan of. And the third season's coming out next week, I think. It's coming out here pretty soon.
I know it's soon.
Yeah, soonish. And it's weird because it's kind of like if you were like, I wish Harry Potter had more sex and drugs, or if like Narnia was just full of like terror, if like Mr. Tumnus was just an asshole. And I think it manages to have interesting magic. It's a little science, and it's a little like the hand choreography is really rad with how they kind of perform some of the stuff. And also just dealing with very classic fantasy settings with a lot of very modern, and it's one of the things I stumbled across and just really enjoyed the first season. Very sexy. It is a very if you're just like, I wish there were more like random orgies and polyamory in my and as someone who grew up with a lot of Narnia, and I think a lot of this stuff will come out, when we start talking about Mother, and started very conservative and Christian and had that long kind of history with Narnia, seeing them deal with it in a very irreverent and more kind of, secular humanist sort of way is very interesting. It does kind of suffer a bit from, you can tell it's adapted from books, and that they kind of jump episode to episode. You can be like, oh wow, it's like this, like 2 weeks went by, or like they tend to kind of, for something that is very episodic, like very serialized, it does kind of take some pretty hefty jumps where sometimes you're like, oh, I would sit through another episode of resolving this death of a demigod or whatever, But it's, again, I'm excited to watch the third season on the TiVo and get it like week to week, because I tend to just like cram it.
They've been advertising that really hard on Facebook. It's been they've targeted ads to me like a lot. Every day these past couple weeks, it's been Magicians. The Magicians are coming out, new season. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? I'm like, I haven't heard of this. What is this?
Everyone I know keeps talking about the show, and it sounds like it was written just for me, and yet I still have not watched it. So that's definitely the next thing I'm going to binge.
Netflix, yeah, I did. Get down a couple episodes into that first season, you're going to be like, oh, okay. It's like, you're like, and I think people don't realize that like they should just have an ad for Sci-Fi Channel that's like, sci-fi, we say fuck now. Like, that should just be there, because I was kind of surprised on like the level of the language and the like suggestive like dryad nudity, male and female. Like,
Farscape was Sci-Fi's first real show, and that show was very adult too. They just kind of got away from it, I think.
And I've also heard there might be less or more uncensored things in the Netflix version than what actually plays
on the television. Yeah. So maybe, hold out for Netflix. We'll see. This will be my first time watching it actually from Sci-Fi, but
cool.
Yeah.
Get the better version on not Sci-Fi. That sounds like a great marketing ploy.
We've had quite a few people come on, and that's been their way they've been doing. And it's funny how it's never been like, yeah, and it's okay. It's either like, it's the worst show I've ever seen, and I hate it so much, or it's phenomenal. So it just makes me want to watch it more.
Sides.
Yeah, we've gotten both many times. So it's interesting.
One of these days, we're going to get someone.
It's
okay. It's okay.
I watched the pilot when it first airs, and I was like, not for me. But now that so many of my friends have said it's really good, I'm gonna revisit it.
We've been trying
speaking
that with Future
of,
Man.
Yeah, what did you do?
we need to move on. We need to move on.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
You're ruining my transition.
We'll talk
That's
later.
such a good one.
Do you like
here.
segues? Well, fuck them.
Yeah, I had a great segue of speaking of like
you want us
divisive
to
things.
Redo it?
No, it's dead now. It's dead.
What is dead may never die.
So Mother or Mother. I don't know how to pronounce it when the first letter isn't capitalized. I get that it makes sense.
You got it right though. I think you got it
Gotta
right.
lean into that
Exclamation
exclamation point, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Mother.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of Mother.
I think that's how it needs to be referred to from here on out. And if you don't say that, you have to redo it. I'm kidding. Please don't do that. All right, so Mother is a movie that came out earlier last year.
You gotta redo it, man.
No, I'm not doing it. It came out earlier last year. I didn't really keep any of the numbers because we all know that it tanked. It tanked really, really badly, and it hurt Paramount a whole bunch.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, and I work at the Paramount lot, and people were very upset about this one. And it's interesting because Paramount leaned into the storm, which I'm not sure if you guys followed it, but it was really interesting, where after the first like week of reviews came out and it was horrible fucking like user reviews and really good critic reviews and people just all across the board on it, they released a new poster that was split down the middle. Of half of it was pretty Jennifer Lawrence face, the other half was beat up as fuck Jennifer Lawrence face, and it had both sets of reviews of terrible and great. And it's like,
I remember that poster and I loved it.
That was a pretty cool poster.
I thought that was pretty phenomenal. It kind of reminded me of like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who did that with basketball. They just posted all the terrible reviews, and it's like, like wow, okay, just lean into it. But yeah, so it did not do well. Nobody, like some people saw it, a lot of people didn't, and a lot of people who saw it hated it. And I just want to do a real quick hot take around the table before we get into our 30-second breakdown. So all of us will just say our gut reaction, just as short as seemingly possible. I loved it. John?
I'm pretty middle of the road.
It's exhausting, but for me, it's well worth to watch it.
Okay.
Would have made a really good short film, not so great a movie.
Loved it. People are going to be writing college papers about it for years.
Perfect. Okay, let me pull up a timer here, and we're going to do our breakdown.
Oh, God.
I love the worried "oh gods" we get on this.
God.
Yeah, break this down in 30
Wait.
seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds of Mother.
Well, it has no plot, so.
Or does it?
It has every plot.
so-
It is all the plots.
All the plot.
Johnny, are you ready to do this?
No.
Does
But
it,
we're
does
going
it
to
help
try.
you to see a timer or not see a timer?
Let's, okay. I think not.
I can turn away.
It's away.
Historically, the people who don't look do fail. I'm just
That's a
letting
good
you know.
position for the camera, though.
Yeah.
Just letting you know. Okay.
Yeah, well, let's see how far I get
All right.
into this.
Mother in 30 seconds. Here we go.
A lady catches fire. There's a magical gem. Hey, look, it's Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence is building a house. Her husband is a poet creative type who is not doing well creatively. A guy shows up at their house, and then his wife, and then their sons, and then one kills the other. And then there's a wake, and the wake goes crazy, and Jennifer Lawrence says, "Get out of my house." So at that point, writer writes something magical. They have a baby. Oh my God. And chaos, riot, Jesus, death, fire, and it all starts over again.
That was really good.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I count that as a win. Yeah.
Okay, good. Damn, I rehearsed that in the shower like 5 times. No. Nope. Not at all.
It's funny how little 30 seconds actually
It's
is.
not a lot of time.
Yeah, we used to do 20 seconds, so imagine that.
Oh, God.
Everyone failed. That's why we moved back to 30. All right, so that's that. This is one of the few ones where it's like, where do we start on this thing? I honestly think the best place to start with this is just your entry point, which would be Jennifer Lawrence.
She's pretty.
She is very pretty. The movie reminds you of that constantly.
Her hair.
That's
Her
why I was
hair in
telling
this
Brian last
movie.
night. Those are extensions.
It's beautiful.
That's not all her hair.
I know, but her hair is her hair extensions.
Yeah.
are beautiful. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can tell that.
You can sew hair into your head. And
That
just,
makes no sense to me.
you can just,
I've watched it slowly happen to actresses. For
The way you worded that sounded like a horror film.
Yeah, slowly. It took me a second to know this is more of a cinematography thing, but I know that it's pivotal to the cinematic understanding of the entire movie, but the always Steadicam on her, always it's her world. It is 100% her
totally.
world. And that I kind of hate movies that stay in that Steadicam world, particularly when we're always looking at her on the same lens at the same height, even with all the tracking shots through the house. I would almost wait, point the camera at something else just so I can see a different lens or a different height.
Yeah.
Just because that, to me, as the story's building, and I could tell it was there for a story point of view, but I just wanted, and again, I got it because shit goes off the rails. But that first 20 minutes of just Jennifer Lawrence face on an 85, right at face level, got a little bit kind of, and she does a great job, and she's a beautiful subject for that, and so much of the story plays out in that frame. But I was just cinematically got slightly tired of that, which was quickly rectified later. But,
I mean, yeah, they moved past it, but I do think it's kind of like what you're saying. I do think it was motivated. So I think it works, but it does kind of it does get a little grinding. I think.
definitely felt it when we saw it in theaters.
It didn't bother me as much.
It bothered me at the beginning, but then I got used to it.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it was another reason that I call this movie exhausting.
Yeah.
Because there is no moment of clarity or jokes or whatnot. There's none of that.
And normally, yeah, it's the motivation that helped that thing work
It
for
was
me.
done on purpose.
Oh,
It was done on
yeah,
purpose, and it
100%.
was done with like a logic that I could discern within those like 20 minutes or
Sure.
So it worked for me, and a lot of times that technique doesn't. I'm like, why are you doing this? And if I'm asking it like 20, 30 minutes in, it's like, well, you're just doing it to be a dick.
Well,
but this worked.
For me, it's one of those things where in the theater it bothered me more because theater's a lot harder to escape. Like the image is the size of the moon, and you can't really look away from it ever. But at home, like those sorts of things don't really ever bother me as much because I can always just like, oh, this is kind of a grinding shot. I can look at my rat who's in the room with me, or my phone, or something like that. And it's funny because like it kind of destroys the artistic intent of why they did that because to make sure you can't look away and make sure you can't get out of it, which is why I'm always see every movie in theaters that you can because it's better. But it is kind of interesting why, because I didn't even really pick up on it on my second viewing because I have that capability of looking away.
Oh, I thought I complained about it to you after we got out of it.
You did, and well, I agreed with you after the theater. I just didn't really notice at all when we watched it last night.
Sorry.
That's an interesting point. And yeah, you're right. It diminishes because for those 20, 30 minutes, I also was looking away and distracted.
Yeah.
Because it's like at a certain point, it was like my eyes were just tired. Like, not exhausted per se, but it's like, I'm kind of done looking at you. I'm done looking at you.
You're beautiful, Jennifer, but I'm going to look away from
I get it. Like, I just want to see what that door looks like. I like that's a nice door.
And it's a gorgeous house. Like
Yeah.
if the house is story, if house is character, like the production design, and particularly so much of it is very minimalistic, lending itself to kind of this isn't about the couch, this isn't about the crown molding, but like,
well, it's like you pull the house out of Days of Heaven and you're like, I want to see that house.
yeah.
I'm also sort of fascinated by the process of it all because you don't need time for setups. You need time for blocking. You need time for lighting, but you don't have inserts. You don't have coverage. The Steadicam op, it's just there he goes. And I just sort of think that would be such an interesting production to be a part of, as far as to what the priority is completely shifted on a set like that, which is really interesting.
Having done some found footage, though, everyone always thinks, "Oh, this goes quicker." Like I've heard so many people try to pitch the found, but you have to rehearse so much more to get that.
I've been on a found footage film that thought it was cheaper and easier, and it did not go well. Check out Knock Knock 2. It's a doozy.
I mean, anyone who's ever set up a tracking shot knows that shit is not easy.
Yeah.
But we're kind of dancing around a little bit, so I kind of want to talk about it. What do you guys think of the house? Did it make sense to anybody?
The house, because you're only seeing it from her perspective, you're never getting a wide shot, really, per se. So, especially for me, I was just like, I get the feeling that you definitely have these rooms that are in like a circle for the entryway and the stairs going upstairs. But then when they walk around the house, it feels like a maze.
It really does.
I never really got a sense of exactly what the structure of the house was.
Was that on purpose? Because
I think so, yeah.
we keep getting told what an amazing house it is, but we never really see it.
Well, for me, it goes into what do you think the allegory of the movie actually is? Like, is the house the planet Earth, or is it just, like a manifestation of Earth? Because then it kind of makes sense, because if she's wandering from room to room, it's the whole planet. Or is it just a really crazy house? Because if you look at it just like top down, they show it like once, it's just a circle. So it feels like it should make sense very easily.
Yeah.
But then when they start moving through it, it makes no sense.
Well, I think one of the big takeaways for me about the movie, and I think the divisiveness of it, and I think what I think will be the longevity of it once we get out of this, like what happened at the box office, is I don't know if there's an allegory. I feel like there are 5 allegories stacked
more than
on
one,
top
for sure.
of each other. So the house is I think you could say there's a direct correlation that the house is Jennifer Lawrence, like that they are the same thing and they are at odds with each other. The house communicates with her, like the house is the child before the child. Like there's so many things there that anyone that I think leans one way, like this is definitively the allegory of this movie about X, Y, or Z. Anyone else, and I think that's why so many folks from a religious perspective love that.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a lot of yes and. Like, I think you're right. And if you can make your case, then sure, it's about celebrity, it's about God, it's about 1,000 different things.
It's asking you in any one of those versions that you believe in or that you believe in the movie. It's also asking you to disagree with it. Mm-hmm. It's asking you to entertain thoughts that you're not going to agree with. And it's also going to contradict a lot of things that play into that. Because even with any of those tenets, it also breaks those rules in there too. It's not 100%. You can't 100% be one.
Well, it's interesting to me because Jennifer Lawrence on her press junket mentioned a lot how it's about the Bible and how it's, like allegories from the Bible. Like, and a lot of those are very obvious and just like, once you know it, it's hard to ignore. Like the Adam and Eve thing, the Cain and Abel thing. Like it's very, like the flood, like it's all very clear. And I think the main reason why we as like a general audience have all kind of attached that it is only about the Bible is because that's mostly what she was telling us. And that could have just been her mindset for her character to get through the movie, and that's what worked for her. But I agree with you. I think there's more than just the Bible thing going on, because the yellow medicine that she's drinking, that's not from the Bible at all.
Yeah,
No.
That's
And
a
the
Swedish like poem thing that he pulled.
And
from.
also
like
the
I could be wrong on Swedish, but it's a foreign, not American.
Yeah, the cyclical nature too is also not a Christian thing.
Right.
Christian,
It's Buddhist.
yeah, it's very Buddhist, which also, if you're going the Christian angle, that breaks it. That this doesn't work. The thing breaks down. And then if you're also doing the Christian viewpoint, it's also which tenet of that are you? Are you Catholic with the Mary as the deity? Or like she's elevated, or are you doing a much more like Presbyterian one where it's like she's not? Then you're going to disagree. It's not going to immediately fit. But the movie is also malleable, where you can find those things and kind of tuck them in areas.
And I feel like part of it was like the Aronofsky. I saw it as this movie largely as a reaction to Noah, where people were like, he was like, I'm going to take this story that has a lot going on and try to comment on it. And we have such a weird, like, child's toy cartoon beard Noah idea in our heads that people couldn't divorce themselves. He's like, okay, fine. I'm going to make my own myth. And I'm going to talk about all of these things that I feel about. And I'm just going to jam all this stuff in here. And then you guys like talk about it. Like the fact that we're doing this, it's somewhere he's doing a little dance that we're talking about his movie. Because I think so I think there are kind of MacGuffin-y or kind of red herring-y, like the medicine, where it's like, you can't, because I went in, again, having been told, not even from a press junket sense, but by all of my friends being like, hey, buddy, what do you think about this movie? I went in looking like, okay, so what are we looking for here? And I think that first act, like there's stuff like, why is Ed Harris mentioned? Like he's a doctor, he's working on a project, like these things that ultimately your mind kind of wants to fixate on, but also like that could mean something it could not. So I think he gives you some of this information and some of these images just to kind of disrupt the, like, this isn't going to easily fit into one worldview that you're going to try to force onto it.
It also kind of is aggressively against nitpicking. A thing that kind of we do in fandom is like specifics. Like they wear this scarf because that's how it has to be. It's like, well, they call him a doctor because that has to mean something. It's like, no, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's very Force Awakens of everybody.
Yeah, well, there is that element that we kind of do that with some of our movies and things where we have to ascribe a meaning. It has to be an icon to something, and we're very into that. And it doesn't, like, this movie kind of aggressively pushes against that in the beginning, at least.
Yeah.
I would say it's more so in a movie like this, where this is clearly an art piece. It's not very plot driven.
Definitely an art film.
Yeah, and so it's natural to look for meaning because this movie, everything means something because it's artsy, and that at least is how I...
Well, it was weird because I didn't start looking for those meanings until the things start kicking off and get, like, kind of that halfway point. Whereas this, like, in the beginning, I was still very kind of watching it, seeing what was going on, trying to feel the movie out. And I, like, that made it... improved that beginning for me more. It's like these details didn't matter as much. It was like, what is this making you feel? What is percolating up there?
Yeah. It's so funny because I definitely engaged more with the movie as it started, like after the wake, and once I started to see it like kind of open out of the, like,
home invasion kind of standard.
Yeah, standard, oh, this is an indie movie in a house, then we're never going to leave the house. The more it got off the rails, the more that I latched onto it, to the point where, like, by the time they got upstairs, I'm like, oh, we're eating this baby. Like, by the time we get upstairs, I had seen the third act, not in some, like, Sherlock-y sort of way, but I knew where the movie was going.
Oh, yeah.
And I just enjoyed the ride the whole way down.
This is so fascinating that you say that, because that's where I lost interest in the movie, but for the exact same fucking reason.
Yeah.
So, like, as soon as I was just like, okay, I see where this is going, I completely disengaged from it. I was like, I can see every single thing that's about to happen in this movie. It's just going to keep getting worse. These people are going to keep taking. The baby's going to end up getting eaten. It was just sort of like, and I mean, I didn't, predict every single moment, but it was sort of like, okay, I see where we're going. I'm a very plot-driven person. We all know that. So, yeah.
Well, it's just interesting because, that that seems to be where people are going to get the most divisive because
Yeah.
you start falling into what you know. Like especially when it starts getting into those themes that you're familiar with, that you've tread in your mind so many times.
Well, especially with something like religion, because I mean, like, be it Buddhist or whatnot, I mean, Buddhist, Christianity, whatever it is in this thing, like, most of us will come into this with some idea of what all these themes are about that we've heard since we were kids, and here's a movie that's going to do it completely differently. Yeah. So, like, it's going to push back against what you want. So it's tough to really try to get into a story as a movie when it's disagreeing with everything you've ever been told at the same time.
For me, just because I want to get in here.
She did a motion of, like, kicking open doors, just so you know.
Here I come.
I never had a good entry point. When I was going into this movie, I didn't really know what to expect either. From the posters, I was just like, okay, they're referencing, I'm forgetting the freaking movie, the baby movie, Rosemary's Baby.
Okay.
Because clearly the Rosemary's Baby's they use that poster. And I tried to get a friend to go with us, who's a fan of the podcast. I won't name her in case she doesn't want anyone to know. But she specifically told me, no, I don't want to see that shit. That looks like that looks like film school art asshole shit. And I'm like, oh, okay, you don't like Aronofsky.
I mean, but Aronofsky knows how to do film school shit right.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that's how a lot of people just felt about this movie, where they judged it that way before they even saw it. Because especially with the escapism that everyone wants right now, this movie is not about escapism. It's the exact opposite of escapism. And when I was watching it, I didn't know that it was immediately supposed to be about the Bible. I definitely got hints of that. But with the being able to see art in many different ways, it was also about the female experience, which I know a lot of people online talked about. And then for me, specifically, Brian hates this allegory. It's the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have someone who's really excited about it, like, it's going to change it. We should bring everyone together. It's going to be great. And then you have the other person going, no, people kind of suck. I just want to be alone. And then you throw them all on the internet, #Twitter, and some people will be nice, and then everybody else just wants to tear it down.
Well, it's like tickling, where at first it's really fun and like funny, and you're like, I can't. This is great. And then you're like, oh God, stop! It's horrible.
Oh my God,
it's
you're
awful.
all shooting each other.
No, there's so many great, like, just individual moments in the movie, and the one I loved is, I think it's during the wake, when they're all at the house, of the guy who starts talking to her and then starts hitting on her, and then by the end is just calling her like a twat.
Yeah.
And that's like
Tinder.
Oh, hey, look, it's and again, like, oh, here's something outside of anything religious, is about, like, the female experience now and on the internet. And because, again, there's people, she's constantly trying to deal with this dude who's getting weird and creepy and aggressive, and right behind her, there's some people, like, jumping on that counter. Yeah. And so she's constantly, like, and I love that little moment was able to speak to something very true about modern society with all this other shit going on.
Yeah. There's so many moments in the film where I really enjoy this movie. But it's hard for me to even actually use the word enjoyment, and why I say exhausting, because every time I'm just like, I've experienced this in some form. I know what you're doing. I mean, she's got a husband that sucks, and luckily I don't have a husband that sucks.
I did.
I've had boyfriends that have sucked, and I've experienced those emotions. I've actually had a party where I did burst out and go, everyone get out! And screaming at the top of my lungs, which at that moment, you feel like shit, but you desperately just want everyone to get out, no matter how much you don't care that they're going to hate you afterwards, because you don't want to look at their face. And I could relate to that moment so well. And then as the movie just goes, I'm just like, I desperately just want to jump into it and be like, just get out of the house. I know he won't let you live. I know this is kind of like a birdcage in a way, because it is cylindrical, especially with the sequence when Michelle Pfeiffer is circling her in the middle of the entryway.
Right.
It is such a trap for her, and you just want to help her get out. But if she is the planet Earth, she can't leave, because then she can't just go out into space.
Well, the one allegory that I've heard that I really kind of enjoy is that she is not the planet, that she is life, and the house is the planet Earth. So if she leaves, life is leaving Earth. That's why she never leaves, even like the doorway.
Well, I like that. There's one moment where she's like, "Let's just be together and be by ourselves and be quiet." Like there was this simple moment where she was just pleading for him to stay.
Yeah.
And as like someone who's a little bit more introverted, more of a homebody, it's like when you do too many things. And this is just a very generic metaphor, but like you want that peace of it's just us, kind of a centralized, like have a moment, and it's also like saying, "Hey, a moment could be good."
And that's a very much commentary on the internet for me because it would be like, if we're sharing everything on Facebook or Twitter, then what the hell even matters? You don't get anything for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's supposed to, and what's beautiful about it is I think people want to ascribe these grand allegories to her, but I also saw very much that she is just like the female experience. She is I saw her a lot of our relationship with God as far as like, I want my piece of it. I saw weirdly a lot of my relationship with my mother, which was interesting so it kind of even breaking out of gender stereotypes, because I had a mother who, in a very Javier Bardem sort of way, always wanted more people to kind of deal with. She was very like first wave feminist. I want a job, to the point where like when I was a kid, she started childcare in our house. Like 3 kids weren't enough. She had to have like 10. And then she worked for like the girls club. And then there was always like 30 kids around. And even at church, and all of a sudden someone's like, well, her parents are getting a divorce and his mom's addicted to heroin. And I'm like, I'm not good at soccer and I don't like that. And sometimes you just want the attention from that person who's supposed to be very important to you. And they're like, yeah, but these people need me. And so like there were some very like individual specific moments in that I was like, oh man, this is me and my mom. I'm like, that's not something I ever thought I would ascribe to the movie, but it hit me in a way that I haven't seen that specific feeling committed to film in a way that this movie was able to pull off.
And then even when you flip that around, where it's like just relationships with our mothers, and where we demand so much, she essentially gives us everything, and we don't, we just take. And so as someone with many siblings, and I'm starting my own family, it's like,
You've
wow.
started.
Well, started.
You're continuing.
Continuing. But as someone with his own family, like I'm now away from, like I'm no longer with my parents, and we're different now. But like I just took everything, in a manner of speaking. That this movie really kind of did that in a neat way, I think.
Did all you guys see your moms in this?
I did not know.
Okay, me neither.
I
All
didn't
right.
see my mom.
Okay, all right.
I didn't see.
I didn't
know that
see
was a comment.
No, I could see that correlation. Like that totally makes sense. It
My
just
mom
that
was
didn't.
more controlling in my household.
not
than
necessarily
everyone else's.
Same.
a mother figure so much as what like I took from that relationship. Is like I just took. I was always taking, sort of in the way that like everyone's taking from her in this house, and I recognize a pattern of behavior that was in that. So not necessarily like the mom. It's like, hey mom, I saw you in this movie. It's more like I saw what I did.
No, that's
saw
fine.
how
I just didn't know if
yeah.
that was if I was the only one who didn't have a mom.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
The one thing we really haven't talked that much about that I think really needs to be talked about is Javier Bardem, or how you pronounce his last name. I'm always a little bit off.
He's the selfish artist.
He is, but he's also most definitely God. Like he's one of the ones where it's like I know there's a lot of different like ways you can take a lot of things in this movie. I see him a little bit more cut and dry, personally. I mean, feel free to disagree, but especially just you go to the credits. He's the only character who has a capitalized name. Like everyone else is lowercase, but
that's
him,
interesting.
It's him.
him
He also
is
refers to him in the way that the Bible refers to God,
yeah.
capital
I am
L-O-R-D,
I.
I am, or I.
Yeah.
I am I. And like he uses the language of the Bible to refer to himself.
So like whatever the rest of the movie is, it can be a billion different things, and I love it for that. I might disagree with the internet thing, but I love that people can take that out of there. For Javier Bardem, I don't think there's much wiggle room, because the whole time I'm watching it is like he is orchestrating all of this at all times, and whether or not you think that he created Michelle Pfeiffer or just created a situation for her to show up, it's still just him pushing this thing forward at all times with no regard for anyone around him, which I think is kind of an interesting take on God.
Oh yeah, it's not Morgan Freeman.
No,
Certainly. And I think it's great to see the complexity of all of the different permeations of God, and in almost the Dr. Manhattan way, where he can just not see us at all.
Yeah.
For, the tree for the forest. Sure. And take joy out of, or to contemplate on suffering. And all those kind of, because even when he's taking that baby outside and she's nodding off, he, in some ways, he kind of has to. Like, and there's a tragedy wrapped up in that, and you're like, God, why not? Or like, can we just be alone for a second? Which is all of our kind of existential, like, we want that slice of whatever else is happening in the world for us, but also like the world. It's that really stupid logic flaw of like, well, there's people starving in Africa. But he manages to capture that, I think, in the performance of the weird, like, not even do like the infinite complexity and variation of, and the things he just gets irate at.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. And you're just like, whoa, like,
I think his performance is phenomenal in this movie. I love him in it, and I love him for how much I hate him. And I think it's interesting because I didn't really hate him my first time through. The first time through, I was not necessarily on his side, but I could see why he was doing everything. Like, it kind of made sense in like as you said, the forest through the trees. It's kind of like he's taking care of his whole creation, and she's just part of it. So I was like, okay, I can kind of get it. And then my second time through, I'm like, no, I kind of hate him the whole way through. Because like, he's, by trying to control everything, he's controlling nothing. And he's just fucking the whole thing up. And he still thinks that he's doing the right thing the whole way through. He loves everyone. He loves them all for coming. He loves them all despite of them killing his baby. Like, and it's like, if you take it more on like the story point of view, it's like, he is fucking horrible.
Yeah. And she's just really trying to make like a really nice paint color for that house. Like, she's doing a lot of real hard work to give them a nice place to be together.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care that people are painting just with a roller over the thing that she very carefully kind of gave to him as a gift.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm making a face because, like, while you were talking about him, the lowercase letters and the uppercase letters thing, I had a fucking epiphany.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, guys. So, because we were talking before the podcast about, like, how everyone said, it's Mother Earth, it's Mother Earth, it's Mother Earth. So, I don't know about everyone else, but when I went into this movie, I already knew that was the big allegory. So, I didn't really feel like I had a chance to decide for myself what this movie was about, because I kind of already had that expectation. But I just realized I found my own fucking allegory with what you said. In the kink community, a dominant is referred to in all uppercase letters, and submissive is always lowercase. He acts like a fucking asshole dom, is what he is, and she's his gentle submissive, and then he invites all his buddies over for a gangbang without negotiating it with her first. Yeah. So that's what I see in this movie.
Yeah, actually, the moment, for me, the anger leads to sex in TV and film is always a slippery slope in my mind.
Sure.
Because no means no, and
specifically
movies like to not
when she's trying to go away, he grabs her arm and she starts yelling no.
Which is kind of great that they do it on the stairs, which are themselves kind of a weird slippery slope.
I've never been a fan of that.
A little more literal.
You can have me on your side when mutual people are like angry and they start hitting each other and then they start making out. I'm like, okay, because then it's kind of organic. But when one of them's trying to leave the situation and then the other one stops them,
well, there's
I'm
a difference between,
this is not romantic now.
There's a difference between sexual assault and rape and consensual non-consent, which is what you've negotiated ahead of time that you're going to say no. And
they make it look like she was really into it. It's the same thing that they did in Gone with the Wind, where she's all hunky-dory in the morning, and I'm like, he just kind of forced himself on her.
Oh, he definitely did. In both.
Best version of that, History of Violence. Which I think has got a very, like, that. Those are two people who are working out, even wordlessly, which, again, from the community, like, hey, words, guys, use them. But that is a much more balanced, but weirdly, and I think playing into him as God, like, let's go to Zeus and the Immaculate Conception and all of these other things, like, hey, like, there's not really consensual God sex in, like, as a cultural idea.
If God wants to have sex with you, he's gonna do it.
The Magician, season
Mary
3 coming to
Jesus.
Sci-Fi. No, sorry, but
Mary never said yes. Mary just woke up one morning and went,
That's a very good
and
point.
an angel shows up and goes, oh, hey, by the way.
Well, the whole religion is based on a really fucked up scenario.
Yep.
Yeah.
Most religions are.
That's true.
That's why I say God is not perfect, and then a lot of people get mad at me.
That's a discussion for a different day. What haven't we hit on this movie? I feel like there's so much to talk about that it's kind of tough to talk about it all.
The rest of the cast.
Yeah.
I mean, there are
Tom Gleason,
Michelle
I love him so much.
two main
Oh, yeah.
characters, and then you have the rest of the cast, which, you know, Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and then all, like, Sodom and Gomorrah and all this stuff that happens, and I mean, I love Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer is so great.
So good.
Like, I hated her. You talk about how you hated him
Yeah,
in the second
right.
viewing. I hated her even more in the second viewing. She plays the worst manifestation of Eve I've ever seen. She's selfish. She's intrusive. She doesn't listen when someone says no. And she just goes in and breaks things.
I have a thing about that, and I think there's a very intentional reason why she's so fucking shitty.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of. I think she's a personification of what white men think about, like, not all white men, but that sounds terrible. But like
Hashtag not all white men.
the white men treatment of women from like the super religious, like the women are always the failed ones. They're created from men's ribs. Like they're just like they're always the lesser. And because of the lesser, they're just as unimportant and annoying. And they made Michelle Pfeiffer that personification.
She's a drunk who talks about how you need to make sure you can still have sex.
Yeah, who you need to have sex, you need to be desirable, you need to make babies, you need to be a tool for the man. And that is all she's telling him to do. And it's that perfect, like, representation of the worst idea that people still have to this day about women. And I think she nailed it. Like, perfect. But because of that, you hate her so much. And it's just like, when she like shows off her underwear to Jennifer Lawrence, like, you got to stay sexy. And I love that Jennifer Lawrence, like, in the beginning is just so passive aggressive, like, oh yeah, here's your lighter. I'm gonna put it behind your dresser. I'm gonna drop your underwear behind the washing machine. It's just like, it's so like effective, but just kind of annoying. And
That's why
I just,
I'm always losing things. Planet Earth is messing with me.
Planet Earth doesn't like you. You went to zoo school. Now you're in the film industry. How dare you?
Don't shame me like that.
Okay, that's a conversation I want to have later.
It's true.
But I think it's really interesting. I love Michelle Pfeiffer for doing it. I always love Michelle Pfeiffer, but she plays that role so well that I never want to meet her. Because if she's at all like that, I'm just going to be horrified of her at all times.
I want to meet different versions of Michelle Pfeiffer.
There's an interesting dynamic there. As someone who is recently married and knows that we're not going to pursue having children, that's
Right.
not something that we're doing. She captures that kind of the slightly older woman telling you how things are and how they're going to be. And the funny thing is, you see the three other women who go through this process, and you can imagine that happening to each and every one of them, of this imprinting, this generational imprinting of like, oh, you just you wait.
Oh
like,
God,
this
they
is
love
gonna-
to do that shit. They
Oh,
love to tell
just
you you'll
you.
change your mind.
Yeah. Oh, like, oh, it's gonna. Like you're gonna. And she captures that, and also in an Eve sort of way of that, like the possession of the knowledge of good and evil, like possession of like, here's this, I'm gonna use worldly knowledge as like a force that I'm gonna keep pressuring and pushing on you. When she just like, I want to have a nice house, and maybe we'll have a baby, and maybe we'll have like a,
Yeah. It was I don't know why this reminded me of it. I was going to bring it up earlier, and then we got sidetracked. But when you say we just want to have a house and just kind of live our own life, I think it was really interesting it's totally off topic from Michelle Pfeiffer, but I think it was really interesting to date the movie, to make it modern day.
oh yeah, first cell phone comes out.
Yeah, like that was like it was a really interesting choice, and I'm sure there's reason behind it that I didn't quite fully grasp, but it was like, I thought that was not odd, but it was just kind of like, oh, I thought this movie was going to be more like timeless. Like,
Well,
where it was never going to
It's
fully
timeless
state.
for Jennifer Lawrence. She never touches technology.
No, she doesn't. Neither does Harvey Bardem ever. Yeah. Like, he leaves the house, but like, you never see him in a car. You never see him with a
With the
phone.
exception of the lighter. Haha.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the lighter is
Ooh.
still mechanical. It's not.
Yeah, it's not like-
She also gets rid of
computerized or
it for the
electrical or
time.
anything.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was just kind of interesting. That I thought it was a kind of a cool idea to actually place it in a time instead of just make it this like ethereal
And
oddness.
And I think that's going to help us project modern things like the internet thing onto it. Like,
Yeah, totally.
And that's the point of it, I think.
Yeah, you could totally be right. But anyhow, we were talking Michelle Pfeiffer and
Dominic
Harris,
Gleeson.
Domahal.
Gleeson. He's got a hard name for me.
He does.
Again, like with Michelle Pfeiffer, I adore him.
He's so good.
He's great.
He
Yeah.
loses himself in every role.
totally.
Even when he's playing the schmarmy guy in Star Wars right now, his schmarm is amazing.
But
he
you go
also,
from
Okay.
but you go from this movie to General Hux. It's two completely different
And then you look at his
characters.
character in The
Different.
Revenant.
Or the Revenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't-
They're all different.
I didn't
Yeah.
recognize him in this, and at first because of his performance, I was like,
Yeah.
that looks like Domhnall Gleeson, but it can't be. He's so different.
I actually want to
But-
see Peter Rabbit now.
Yeah.
as Cain, because Cain kills Abel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always worry that I'm mixing that up. I loved his representation of Cain because he's being smited. He's not the favorite son. And just like in the Bible where he apparently in the Bible, Cain loves his brother so much that in order to appease God in his sacrifice, he feels like he has to sacrifice his brother. He feels that that's what God wants because he's asking him to be like, sacrifice your most valued object.
In the Bible, he offers vegetables, and Abel does the lamb. And
yeah, I know, but it turns out to be wrong because he's supposed to sacrifice the thing he loves the most. And they reference that after he kills his brother, and they're all like, "How could you do this? How could you do this?" And then when him comes in, he yells, "This is your fault." It's an easy thing to miss, but he yells that at. I keep forgetting the actor's name.
Ed Harris?
No.
Oh, Javier Bardem?
Javier Bardem. He's like, "This is your fault." He yells that for a spark moment where it's just like, he's yelling at God, "This is your fault." And it's true, because in the story, it definitely is God's fault because he didn't really communicate very well.
I think...
And then he comes back for his wallet, and he just goes, "He left you alone? You're alone here?" Yeah. And then he leaves the door, he closes the door and says, "Good luck."
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
It's so like,
I'd
fuck.
like to. Here's a weird honorable mention, but I think it needs to be kind of put out there because I think it's the only slight bit of like stunt casting towards the chaos is for Kristen Wiig, who I think shows up.
I still don't know what she represents.
I think, but
herald.
it's a perfect kind of. She's a herald, but she's also like I think very literally like the publicist.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's in that turn of chaos of like. We're promoting this thing, and then it turns, and then she's just very cavalierly shooting people in the head. And
like
I think,
you do.
yeah, but I mean to capture the idea of this super well intentioned thing, and she's one of the first people to like, let's get the word out, let's do it, and then to have her show up and just shooting people on the floor to capture all of the complexities of nationalism and religion and 2,000 years of oops, like, hey, we murdered a whole bunch of people. And I think she managed to bring that. And it's the first time there's this idea that really 12 Years a Slave kind of ruined for me was like, I call it like, Ladies and Gentlemen, Paul Giamatti, where all of a sudden in a movie, it's just like, and they show up and then they're gone. Yeah. And I think she very specifically, out of all of the other heralds and people and cultists that show up towards the end, she's very specifically this face that we grab onto. And I think that's where a lot of people's being like, oh, there's tones of celebrity and tones of like the elevation of these people only to have it all turn sideways. And I think that was very smart casting, and I think she does a great job of capturing some of those really complex ideas in very small amounts of time.
And some good framing too, because you have to find her. Like you don't immediately see her, and she's obscured until she kind of pops into focus.
Yeah, and you're like, oh
and
my
every
God.
time you're like, wait, is that? Oh, that's Kristen Wiig. Okay, yeah.
And she just sticks up out of the crowd, like, oh, there you are, and it's like, oh, holy shit, there she is.
I haven't read anything about her being in the movie, but I wonder if like he sought her out or if she sought Aronofsky out.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
One of them probably had to have chosen the other one for this.
Yes.
I did like her. I liked when she came in and started shooting people because I didn't expect. That was the thing I didn't expect in the middle of all of this, but also, violence.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked her character. Like, it was just interesting how, like, she was just so ready to not just go with the flow, but kind of try to steer the flow. Yeah. It was like, oh, shit's kind of going crazy. We want to start a book signing right now. And she brings everybody in. She starts the book signing. And and, like, every time that, like, the last third of this movie, we haven't really kind of mentioned it, but it's completely fucking bonkers, and it treats time as if it doesn't exist. Like, time is operating completely different in the rooms that Jennifer Lawrence is not in. And, like, the best way to describe that is basically, like, so we have Kristen Wiig doing a book signing, Jennifer Lawrence goes to a different room, something horrible happens, she comes back to the same room, and now Kristen Wiig is shooting people on the floor. And it's like, what the fuck happened?
Or there's a rave, or there's an East European brothol.
Yeah, it just keeps changing.
I think when they set that up well though, so that it wasn't too jarring because we saw her like having stomach problems, and you could see like it set up a little bit of a mystical element that we were looking inside her, and then she suddenly knew she was pregnant and all these. So it didn't bother me too much that time had no meaning because it was sort of like a freight train. It started with little things and then it went and got more weird and more surreal till you were lost.
But I don't think it was a problem at all because like the time still works with Jennifer Lawrence. Like she starts going to labor and then by the end of it she's having the baby. So like the time progresses normally for her, but for everybody else, it's just insane.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of interesting because the only real other point person you have besides Javier Bardem was Kristen Wiig, and she's just such a little part of it. But it is kind of cool that she just kind of pops up and then.
And I think that whole sequence very wonderfully, as we talked about, like layering allegory.
Yeah.
It's there's the kind of the idea of any of your like Occupy movements of like or any of your anarchist movements is like, oh, 2 years from now you guys are starting a government. Like, that if you're talking about religion or government or just history itself, all of these revolutionary ideas start and eventually will have to suffer through that process of like someone's going to start a war or call the cops or like have women chained up. And I think particularly tying that specific image of her as all of these other things, deity included, and humanity, and like, oh God, how did we? And I think to speak to particularly like the Christian church's treatment of women over 2,000 years, and I know that the modern church is really struggling with this right now. I thought was a wonderful image to tie in there of like, you guys are also culpable with this and this riot, and like this is all because he wrote a poem. Like this all happened because he wrote a poem that people liked. And I think that was a wonderful sequence to pull in a lot of different layers of meaning and really give some nice specific things for people to kind of chew on.
And it's a sequence that like I almost feel you need to watch a few times to fully kind of grasp everything that's going on in there. Because I've only seen it twice. And it's like the second time through I picked up way more stuff than I did the first time through. And like little things. Like I noticed like the women in cages, like that part where they run by and it's like it's blink and you miss it. But it's like women in like their little cages. And for some reason the first time I didn't realize they're all locked.
Oh, really?
And like they really they hold on those locks to let you know that they are locked in with like brand new, straight from Lowe's, like golden locks.
That might be a moment of divide between being a girl and a guy then, because I saw that immediately.
Yeah, it very well could be.
Especially
Yeah.
when the East European guy grabbed her and slammed her against the wall and started looking at her
Oh,
teeth
yeah.
like she was a horse. I'm
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah,
like,
that
these
one I
men
know.
are just trading these women.
Really
And-
works with my BDSM theory, guys.
But yeah, no, it's on because I obviously noticed that they were in cages, but I didn't notice like it was clearly intentional, like pristine locks.
Yeah.
And it was like there's little things like that throughout the entirety of it, and it's funny because we say the whole time like we just want her to leave, and it's not until the last third that she actually wants to leave, and then nothing will let her leave.
Yeah.
Like every time she gets near a window, the window explodes, or somebody tackles her, or worse, and it just keeps
thing-
getting worse and worse.
That I didn't pick up on as much was the actual treatment of his poem, because when they started doing
They turn it into the Bible.
well, yeah, but when the whole process of it, when he starts the signing, and then Kristen Wiig asks for, where's the original print? We want to show it.
Yeah.
And the priest guy says, oh, I have it. And she's like, okay, give it to me. And he's just like, no. And then in the background, when Jennifer Lawrence is walking away, you're seeing them starting to have like a physical fight over it.
Oh, it gets
then-
worse.
It's
Yeah, and then-
framed and
Yeah, it gets framed.
And then it gets framed, and then they're dancing and holding it over their heads and stuff. And that's where, like, it get very personal for me, because there's another time where I get into fights with other Christians, because, like how I said, I don't think God's omnipotent, but I don't think he's perfect. The Bible's great, I enjoy it, but also that shouldn't be the only thing you based your religion off of, because there's also mistakes in it.
Well, for me, that led more to. I think that was personally. I think it was more of a commentary on people worship the Bible, not God.
That's what I mean.
And
Like,
it's
it
like-
shouldn't just be about the Bible, it should be about the actual faith.
Yeah, and I thought that like it's literally a 3-second shot.
Yeah.
But it nails it, and like that's why I think that whole sequence needs to be watched a few times, because there's a bunch of things in there, and it just feels like Aronofsky is just like he had a list of things that irk him, and it's like I'm gonna get them all out in this fucking shit.
But yeah, and I think to that too, I think there's a for some reason, and again, the whole movie works as like, here's a myth, guys, chew on it. Like here's and if you look back to like Lewis and Tolkien of like myth is almost a better way to digest truth. Like capital T truth than like facts. And I think a lot of modern Christians want the Bible to be a bunch of facts, which it's not really.
No.
And it wasn't
it's
intended to
not
be.
supposed to be.
It's written,
you know?
it's written by man as they interpreted God's words, and as long as we know, that's usually it doesn't go very well.
But they also didn't consider history to be a series of facts. Like
Yeah.
they wouldn't have understood our modern academia. That's not how we process things.
It's more cautionary tales of like, this is kind of what happened to learn what not to do, and it's like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not fact, and like that's why this movie did so much of that stuff, and they express so much of that stuff so quickly, but so articulately. Like that's where it's tough for me to be I get why people don't like watching it, but the full blown like this is a terrible movie, like, and I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm like, it's just
There's
not.
so many people
I get
hate
not
it.
liking it, and I get even hating it, but like, there's too much like craftsmanship that went into this thing to say it's
from
a
an
bad
artistic
movie.
point of view, it's
Yeah,
just again returning to where I was saying, like in the beginning, is the blocking. Like you were talking about all the things. There's a fight going on in the background where she walks out of the room. Like the amount of things that are going on in the fucking background.
yeah.
On a tracking shot as they're like removing a sink from the wall, so they have to reset that shit if any one thing doesn't work right. Like, I just, from a filmmaker's perspective, you're just like, holy shit, the amount of work that went into prepping
If
every
I
shot.
was an on-set dresser on this movie, I probably would have shot myself.
Sure.
I'm like, I need like 3 more people, and you better give me time.
See, I just think about it from a post-coordinator standpoint. Like, all right, here's the footage. Go over it real quick before you hand it to the editor. What do you mean real quick? Like, what the fuck? How am I supposed to... God, I hope there's notes.
There's not okay.
Yeah, as an AD, like, how do you think they handled all these extras?
I'm guessing there was just a ton. Oh, there we go. I got
Told you
very
it happened.
comfortable, very comfortable with like the lovely conversation we're having, and didn't lean into the mic. Yeah, no. I what's funny is like I can see them running rehearsals for the later stuff while we're shooting like 3 people in a house. Like over on stage 4, like we're rehearsing like riot sequence number 2, you know, with Jennifer's stand-in, while like Javier Bardem is like, I cannot write, you know, like over on stage 4, just so that because you know, right? You know that stuff's coming, and you know that there's going to be 3 weeks of like, or 4 weeks of just like, let's get into it.
Yeah.
And also as a script supervisor, I love that I do my job by myself. I'm having a hard time imagining some of those shots handling by myself. I would basically ask every single person at monitor, like, look at the fucking extras, please.
Can you be
Could you please look?
Yeah.
Could you please help me out here, guys? I cannot see all of this with my 2 eyes.
Well, there's so many times when I watch movies like this, I'm always wondering, like, okay, how many of these actually had more than one take? Because there's so much complexity, so much cleanup, so many parts of it. There's no way you had a lot of takes.
Well, for me, that's where it comes down to the quality of director. And I think Aronofsky is amazing, and he has been forever. And it's like, that means that when there's a take, it's because the one thing that he wants in that shot, because usually, for most directors that I've spoken to, or myself when I've done it, there's usually one major thing you want to accomplish with a shot. And he would know whether or not that one thing was done and whether or not he needed to do it again. Or if the background stuff didn't fully work and they needed to do it, but it's not quite there. As long as that one thing that he's looking for is good, then the likelihood of multiple retakes will not be going on.
Which is the best quality in a director.
Yeah.
When you're like, is this what you want? Yes. Okay, cool, we're done. I don't have to wait for you to make a fucking decision.
And like that's with Aronofsky, I would imagine, I've obviously never worked with him, but I would imagine he's a guy who knows exactly what he wants at most times.
You got to, and because this isn't comedy. You can't just have people spouting out words constantly and be like, that one was nice.
But there are great directors who do movies that we love who do not operate like that.
Yeah,
like
true,
I'm blanking on his name now.
Doug Liman.
Doug Liman's like that. The guy who did Rogue One.
Gareth
Edwards.
Yeah.
He is known for just, all right, shoot. What are we shooting today? Oh, I didn't come up with a shot list. We're just shooting.
Yeah, just dump it out and kind of put the pieces
Yeah,
together.
and
I really hate rolling rehearsals, guys.
That's
mean,
where
he
I
shot,
love these
like-
movies, but I'm not sure I want to work on.
He
set.
shot like an unprecedented amount of hours for his movie Monsters. Like apparently there's like hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours of footage that they made an 1.5-hour movie.
Yeah.
And that's just how he operates. And like some people can make it work and it's great, but some people are very direct. And I think with a movie like this, you need somebody who can just be like, this is exactly what I want.
Oh, this many moving parts? Yeah, you have to.
I do want to backtrack to something you mentioned about like the people who were saying that like this movie sucks, but it doesn't. Kind of what led to this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. Well, movies like these I appreciate because they kind of ask us to maybe disagree and hate what happens in the movie, but to appreciate how it went about it. And a lot more lately, I've been more about how a movie goes about it than what happens. Because in this movie, there's a lot of things I actually disagree with and fundamentally like position myself in different opinions on it and how it plays out. And things that happen in the movie I don't like, or ways that it goes about it I don't like or agree with. But the movie is really well made.
Yeah.
But that is a hard distinction that you have to come to the table with. Like you have to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
we're not trained for that. And I think with our escapism, we're not trained for it. We want something that we can just...
A lot of
Toast
people
and-
don't want an art film. There's a lot of people in the world that just hate art films.
Which is why it's so interesting that Paramount backed this movie.
Yeah. And I would say really tangential to that in a movie that demands to be kind of accepted on its own terms. And I think I see this in my head as the shift happening around Prometheus for me, particularly a movie that I was disappointed with on first viewing, but have come to really love on second, third, fourth, fifth. This movie demands, like, you have to watch this movie again. Like, you cannot watch this movie once. And me and a bunch of my friends recently, again, with Last Jedi being like the most recent one, are just like, okay, go in, come in, sit down, watch this thing. But like, maybe don't just immediately jump into binging a season of this. Like, this demands to be like, come back, rewatch it, sit down, ingest it now that you know what it is. Like, I mean, I think there's so many of these movies that we revere and we hold the new movies up to old Ghostbusters, old Star Wars, old whatever, old Blade Runner. And we watched those originals. We burned through VHSs just watching it and watching it and watching it and watching it. And now we sit in a theater one time and we're like, nope.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
You forget how many of those movies, when they came out, people hated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took years for people to understand and be like, oh, this is actually a really good film.
I mean, fuck Empire. People hated Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a culture of people who get glee out of hating something. Like, they're prepared to hate it. They want to hate it. They like being the guy who hates it, except so many people are the guy who hates it that it's not really all that original anyway. So just decide what you like and don't worry about what everybody else thinks.
I do that every day. I still like Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I mean, as our
We'll get drinks sometime and talk about that.
Our esteemed genius president has proved,
He said so today.
It's easier to get people on your side through hate than with love.
It's true.
It's sadly true in this day and age. I do not believe that for all times because I refuse to. But in this day and age, yeah, you're kind of right.
Yeah, when I went to see... Oh, sorry, this is the Last Jedi comment, so maybe...
We'll save those for when we eventually talk about Last Jedi. I think it's time to move into quotes.
All right.
Unless I missed anything major in this movie. I think we kind of hit all of it. We didn't really talk about Ed Harris much.
We could
but Ed
talk
Harris
about
was
this movie for a long
great. We really could.
yeah.
We could talk longer
cool
than
thing
the
about
movie.
art films.
Yeah.
All right, so my favorite quote, it comes pretty early in the movie. It's a Michelle Pfeiffer quote, and I love Michelle Pfeiffer, and it's one of those things where, like, you can tell that she knows, like, it's this weird, like prophet moment of hers where she just looks at her, she spins on her after she, like, screams at her to not go upstairs to the study, and she just turns around and goes, "Oh, you really do love him. God help you." And it's like, oh, fuck. Like, that moment of, like, oh, you're in love with the wrong person because he doesn't love you back. I mean, he does it in his own way, but not a way that's going to fulfill you in any way, shape, or form.
My quote comes from Jennifer Lawrence. After everyone has left from the wake and she's kind of had a sombering conversation with her husband. And she just goes, "I'm going to go prepare for the apocalypse."
And that just
her...
meant dinner to her.
Yeah. That was just her about to clean up. But I'm like, oh, there's so much foreshadowing.
There actually is more foreshadowing in this movie than I realized on my first viewing. The second viewing is like, oh, wow, they show you a lot of what's coming.
You have to turn the brightness up a lot because there's a lot of shadow. There's a quote I like.
The lamest joke.
I know. I had to throw one in there.
He's a dad. He does dad jokes, man.
He started his family.
It actually applies to this in some way. It's Harvey Bardem. He's like, "It's not your fault. Nothing is ever enough. I couldn't create if it was." Me with dad jokes. And I have to. That's what I do. That's what I am. Now I must try it all again. Yeah. It's a really loaded thing.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
And it still sticks with me.
I could see why.
And also, it applies to the dad jokes, too. That's what I am.
I'd start over.
I'm going to start over.
I picked one from early on. Ed Harris. She walks in and Javier Bardem is like, "Oh, she also worked on the house." And Ed Harris is like, "Oh, she's more than just a pretty face." Oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. That's the moment where you're like, "Oh, this guy's a dick." Because that sentence, no matter who you say it to, in what circumstance, is always an asshole thing to say. Of course, she's more than just a pretty face. She's a human being, you piece of shit.
You can't get more old-fashioned sexism from
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I mean,
For
like,
real.
that's the most old-fashioned.
But like the movie also sets that up too, with just only showing her face until like Ed Harris gets there. So it's like this really interesting line for that.
They have some, like, it's
You
not
see
only
her
her
nipples.
face. Yeah,
We see her hair.
Yeah.
Lots of hair.
But like there's a lot
Lots
of
of
her
hair.
face. So
Yeah.
There's more face than nipple. I'll give you that much.
yeah.
The tracking shot, just her nipples moving through the house.
Go, Johnny. Go.
There's
Mine-
some people who'd love that in the
Mine-
worst way.
Yeah.
The
Mine
porn
and-
version of Mother.
I love it. Oh God, so much more baby eating in very inappropriate ways. Mine is funny. It's because there's so many wonderful quotes from it. But for me, the thing that really grabbed me about the movie and where the movie was going, what it was trying to get at, was the first time someone in the wake just comes up to them and they're like, "Oh, who are you again?" And it's like, I've had that experience. We used to have these big parties at my grandmother's house that I had kind of started, and then I went away to college. And then, like, my friends would keep visiting my widowed grandmother and throw these big parties. And I remember coming back once from college, and I'm standing in the kitchen, and someone walks up to me, and they're like, "Oh, hi, I'm Daniel. Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm the grandson. Like, I'm the reason all you fuckers are here. Like, what do you mean, who am I?" And, like, they played that scene out, and I'd never seen that, like, on film, and they captured it. And I was like, oh, no, she's going to be wrestling for control, and more people are going to come in and not see how she's really the center of this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the first time that happens, you're just like, oh no, like this is all going. And for that moment, to me, out of all of the IMI quotes and the big things, and like that, the first time that happens in this movie, I was just like, that hit me like in a crazy way that I was just like, ugh, like, yeah.
I've been there once, but not like at like a family function. But I had a Halloween party back in the day where halfway through, I'm like, most of you fuckers came in off the street. Who are you?
Yeah.
And I had one of them like, "Hey, do you live here?" I'm like, "Yes, I fucking live here. I threw the fucking party."
Yeah.
Oh, I hate all of you.
Was that the one where you also had the experience of suddenly screaming at everyone to get out?
I didn't scream at everyone to get out. I turned off the music. I was way more passive aggressive about it.
Oh no! When I
Did
did
they
it,
start stealing your fixtures?
Oh, they stole a ton of shit.
Oh.
Not like the door jam, but you know.
No, when I had my moment like that was full on coming out of my bedroom screaming at the top of my lungs, "Get out!"
At least you weren't like holding a knife. Get the fuck out!
I want to tell a quick anecdote of a time I was at a frat party and I got really drunk and kind of sick, and I went to the bathroom and I was staring at myself in the mirror, and it was one of those sinks that was suspended from the wall. So
Okay.
I fucking leaned on the sink and it fell on the floor. Sink fell right off the wall. I walked out of the room. Didn't say anything to anyone. Went home with my boyfriend who was in the fraternity. The next day we were walking around the house and he just goes, "Last night some dude fucking ripped the goddamn sink off the wall." And I was like, "That's crazy."
And now you're gonna get a bill in the mail.
That was you representing the great fun.
Okay, so review system for this one's gonna be kind of tough, maybe, but I'm gonna go with movies that mean something else.
Oh, what?
Oh God.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, this will be Emily's least favorite one, I think, of all time. For somebody who's,
I don't even know where to begin. I don't even.
I'll go first. I mean, you can really infer that to be almost fucking any movie. It just depends on what you took from it. But mine is very
no, I
clear
got
cut.
one. All right.
All right, if you got one, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say Chronicles of Narnia, bitches.
Oh,
Lion
that's
the
a great
Witches
one.
in the Wardrobe, because it is about God.
That's actually a really good one. I'm going with the Babadook because, of course, I am. Which is just a horror movie about a woman alone in a house, or it's about living with grief, and it's the best allegory about living with grief almost ever made. So I love the Babadook, and I love Mother.
I'm gonna go with The Witch.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Good one.
Because a lot of people think you'll be like, oh, it's just about a girl who gets seduced by the devil. And I'm like, no, it's about how a girl is has no good options. She can either be stuck with her family where they're just going to like essentially sell her off to another household because she just had her period, or she can go and be enslaved by this other person who's just going to sexualize her anyways as well. She has no good options.
Rough movie. Great movie, but rough.
I think it's the second time you've mentioned that movie. You really like it.
It's a
The Witch
really
is
good
an
movie.
amazing movie.
All right.
Oh yeah.
If you haven't seen it, check it
I've
out.
not seen it.
So good.
I'm going to go with Melancholia. Because even though it's
Okay,
about a planet flying into Earth and killing everyone, it's about depression.
With a title like that, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's maybe just off the top of my head, but I'm going to go with what, yeah. I would say this feels very Donnie Darko-y to me.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
Donnie Darko.
and this is about time, this is about space, this is about your relationship with God and destiny and how you wrap your head around that. And I hope that people revisit the same care and rewatching attention to this movie that, you know, we've lavished on that one, which it holds up less over, you know, 20
Yeah.
years later, 10,
It's-
15 years later. But
It'll be interesting if this movie gets the same sort of treatment of like, this is the greatest art house film ever to it's a piece of shit. And then like 5 years after that, people are like, actually, no, it was pretty good. Like, I think we might have gone a little too hard on it there for a while.
That's my experience with Johnny Darko, because when I saw that, I didn't see it until after like a year.
Yeah.
and of people telling me it's perfect, it's amazing, you'll love it, it's the most, it'll change your life. And then I watched it and I went, what?
What?
This is supposed to change my life. This just seemed like
Interesting.
to me, it felt like a heavy-handed art film.
It's like
It might shock you
It
to
was
know
just way too
how
hyped
much
for-
I love Donnie
Yeah?
Darko. Everyone was like, "You're gonna love this movie." I saw it. I was like, "Oh my god, you guys were all right. This is the
Yeah.
greatest movie ever."
Yeah.
And so
I need
yeah.
to give it another chance. I never watched it again after that.
I
It's
love
just
it.
too many people hyped it up for me.
I hate when people tell me that I'm going to love it so much because then throughout the movie, part of my
Yeah.
rebellious mind wants to be like, no, fuck off. I'm going to hate it because of you.
I do that all the time. Johnny did that with Mother.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I disappoint people if I don't like it.
I've set a terrible precedent for myself in that I need to be asked to be on a podcast about a movie before I sit and watch a movie that I literally got free in the mail.
So we're gonna make Johnny watch as many movies as
Oh,
possible.
sure.
Yeah, I was trying to think the only other movie that I had that with, and I can't. Oh, it was Super. I eventually saw Super. The
Oh, yeah. I saw,
I
your,
also had it with.
I saw your post.
Oh, I hated it so much.
I had
So
it,
much.
I couldn't even get 20 minutes into Super. I turned it off. But
It's not great.
Napoleon Dynamite, I also ended up hating.
It's
Yeah.
not great.
Oh, I'm a super apologist. I think that particularly more as it predated all the Marvel stuff that we've now kind of bloated into. But
Oh,
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
great things in Super,
Yeah.
but it also has a very horrific rape scene that they
sure.
just kind of go, "Ha, rape's fine,"
Rapes- yeah.
and it's like, oh,
Isn't it super?
yeah, that one scene it just ruined the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's funny when it happens to men.
Yeah, when it happens to men and he's crying and throwing up, but we can laugh about it literally 10 seconds afterwards. It's
yeah.
great. Oh, I hate that movie.
Raping men is not funny, and raping women should not be titillating.
Yeah,
Yes.
and yeah, Super really fucks up one of those. But that's a story for another time. For this time, it's time to wrap this shit up.
Yeah.
Woo woo.
I don't really have anything to plug right now, Iron, than I just wrote an article for you can find on athpod.com. I kept track last year of every single movie that I watched. At least I tried to. I noticed after I posted that I actually missed one or two, so I've updated it. So I'm at 225 now. That might go up to 226 if I can figure another one that I've missed.
It's a living list.
It is kind of. But yeah, so I wrote, I listed them all out. I did little kind of like one sentence reviews for some of them, not all of them. And in the end, I do my top 10 list and my bottom 5 list. And that's available now. And I would ask that everybody reads it. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of shitty movies. And
I am a
I
bad
even-
influence when it comes to bad movies.
well, I mean, it's that and just my boredom at 2 a.m. where it's like, oh, I want to stay up till 4. I guess I'll watch Mighty Ducks 2. And it's and
I
it was,
almost got us to watch Space Boobs in Space last night.
What? That's a real movie?
That's a real movie.
I know. I kept
have
staring
a
at it and be like, there's a
weakness
movie
for
called
those
Space
movies.
Boobs
Yeah.
in
You
Space.
can't not
Yeah.
watch that.
That's the title?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
yeah, we almost watched it. And then we made it about 10 minutes in. It's like, oh, no, this is just not fun.
This is made in
Not-
someone's basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's disappointing.
But I do like watching those every now and then. Just wasn't in the mood for it last night. But yeah, so I'd check that one out. And then, of course, check out our Spotify playlist, which come up every Friday. You only have to subscribe to one list, and it changes every week. And it's got a new theme, usually somewhat movie-related, sometimes current event-related, but it changes every week. Currently, right now, we have our CHEWIE picked it. What was it called?
New Beginnings.
New Beginnings. So if you listen to this episode today, our New Beginnings podcast is still available. Or not podcast, playlist is still available. Tomorrow will be something else. We'll figure what that is probably today or tomorrow. And yeah, that's it for us plugs here. Anybody else?
Drunk History should be starting again
Yeah.
soon.
Sweet.
They
What-
had
what?
their
History.
yeah.
they had their Christmas special up, so you could probably still watch that.
It's
And,
fantastic.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny's wife was my boss on that show,
Yes.
and she's fantastic.
Is
so
that how we
it's
met
fun.
Johnny and his wife? Was it
I-
that show?
I met Ray in
Yes.
Chicago.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
you knew
my-
Ray from Chicago.
Yeah.
Lovely lady husband.
Yeah. Ray is fantastic.
The Emmy-nominated Ray Deslich, which I am
She is
contractually obligated to say made it into our wedding
Even
vows.
like, yeah, when you introduced
Yes,
her.
ladies and gentlemen, yeah. But yeah, yay team Drunk History all the way.
Drunk History. I mean, it's such a great show.
I mean,
Just
I know
keep
you.
supporting it. It's like a family.
It's so fucking good. And I obviously I'm married to somebody who worked on it, but everyone I've ever met who's worked in that show has been just the most wonderful people. And it's such a good
It's a
show.
definition of a show that you actually enjoy working on.
And it comes through like in the show itself. Like that's why it's so good. You can see how much fun everyone's having and how much they like being there. And it's just if
Shows
you-
like that are like the reason I want to get in the union.
yeah,
You
like
know?
it's
Oh, yeah.
just so like if you don't watch Drunk History because you think it's just like a Comedy Central just show, which I've heard from many people, it's not. It is so much better than that, and it's fantastic, and everybody should watch
We're
it.
not getting paid to plug it.
I'm not at all. I have no connection to the show at
Yeah.
all, and I love the fuck out of it. It's so good.
Okay. That's my plug.
Johnny, anything else to plug?
No. I'm at Johnny Recher pretty much everywhere.
Cool.
That is a account that I want people to find.
Do you want to spell Recher? Because it doesn't...
Yes, it is. Yeah, REC as in cat, H as in Henry, ER, which I've gotten very good at. And Johnny the way you want to spell it. But yeah, come say hi, argue about movies with me, or theology, or BDSM culture. I'm down for all of it. Let's get weird. I'm ready.
Let's wrap it all into one thing: watching movies while at church, doing BDSM.
Whoa.
Yeah, let's do it. I will start that church. Who is with me?
Oh, I am there.
There is a little crystal in my heart that I will give to all of you. Yeah. Let's do this.
We have to watch Stigmata because I really enjoy that movie.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, why not? And with that, bye.
Bye.
Bye.